At the beginning of the story, we see a brutal desert where a group of boys are forced to dig holes under the burning sun. Suddenly, a rattlesnake slithers in. One boy looks completely done with life, like he has nothing left. He takes off his shoe, lets the snake bite him on purpose, and he dies almost instantly. Then, the scene shifts to a regular kid named Stanley Yelnuts walking down the street. Out of nowhere, a pair of shoes falls from the sky and smacks him right on the head, knocking him down. Stanley picks them up and decides to take them home. But before he can even process what just happened, police surround him. Those shoes belonged to a famous baseball player, and they were stolen during a public event. So of course, the cops assume Stanley is the thief. They take him to his house, and everything there makes him look even guiltier. There are tons of shoes in his home, and in Stanley's room, there's even a picture of that same baseball player. Stanley insists he is innocent, but he still gets dragged to court. The judge gives him two choices: go to jail or spend 18 months at a place called Camp Green Lake. Stanley chooses the camp. On the bus ride, Stanley starts thinking maybe all this bad luck is part of a family curse that has been chasing them for generations. The bus drives through endless desert dotted with holes. At one point, Stanley thinks he sees a man with a donkey on the roadside, but it turns out to be a mirage. Soon, they reach a small town near the camp. Stanley sees a bunch of boys wearing prison-like uniforms. He meets Mr. Sir, the warden's right-hand man, who laughs at Stanley's name like it is a joke. Then, Mr. Sir explains the rules. There are no clocks and no walls. The only prison is the desert itself, stretching for miles with almost no water. A person would not survive out there for long, and that is exactly why nobody even thinks about escaping. At the same time, Stanley gets issued 2 sets of clothes and a shovel. Then he learns the real punishment. Every single day, he has to dig one hole that is 5 feet deep and 5 feet wide, right under the blazing sun. The shovel is even used as the measuring stick, like this place is proud of how miserable it is. And while he is digging, he has to watch for deadly creatures, rattlesnakes and yellow-spotted lizards. He is warned that a bite can kill someone in about 10 minutes. A camp counselor, Dr. Pendansky, gives Stanley a tour and makes one thing very clear: do not bother the warden unless you want things to get ugly fast. Then Stanley meets the other boys who show him where he will sleep. The beds are filthy with old vomit stands, like sick kids have suffered there for a long time. Dr. Pendansky calls everyone by their real names, but the boys only use nicknames they earned at camp. The quietest kid is called Zero because he never talks. Stanley makes a mistake and calls one boy by his real name while asking where the canteen is. The boy shoves him and warns him to use nicknames only. Later, at dinner, a boy named X-Ray takes part of Stanley's food, saying Stanley did not dig a hole yet, so he does not deserve extra. The boys ask why Stanley is here, and he admits he was accused of stealing a famous athlete's shoes. That night, Stanley thinks about the curse his family believes in. He remembers how his dad has always failed with inventions and how his great-grandfather once got rich, then was betrayed by a notorious criminal known as Kissin' Kate Barlow, who stole his fortune and left him to die in the desert. Before sunrise, the boys are jolted awake. After breakfast, they pick a shovel. Stanley reaches for one, but X-Ray snatches it. The smaller shovel is X-Ray's. Soon they reach the digging field. Mr. Sir says Stanley must report anything interesting. If the warden likes it, Stanley gets the day off. He insists the holes have no real goal. The work is meant to change them. While Stanley digs, he remembers how the curse began. His ancestor Elia raised pigs and fell for a girl named Myra. He asks a fortune teller named Madame Zeroni what to do. She tells him to forget Myra and go to America. Elia refuses, and a rival tries to win Myra's father with a huge dowry. These are wedding gifts offered to the bride's family. Madame Zeroni gives Elia a ritual. Each day he carries a piglet up a mountain. He lets it drink. He sings until it grows strong. Then he must carry Madame Zeroni up so she can drink too. If he fails, a curse will follow his family. Elia raises the pig, but Myra chooses by guessing. Elia leaves for America and forgets Zeroni. But here is the twist. Elia leaves without carrying Madame Zeroni up the mountain even once. He forgets her, and that is when the curse begins to follow his family. Back in the present, Mr. Sir drives up with a water truck so the boys can refill their bottles. The other kids notice Stanley's first blister and mock him. Zero finishes first because he is the best digger. When Stanley finally finishes, nobody helps him climb out. He realizes fast, out here, you survive on your own. When they return, Stanley suddenly sees Mr. Sir aiming a gun at him, but he is really targeting a yellow-spotted lizard and he shoots it dead. Days pass and Stanley slowly adapts. He wakes up early, eats the same awful food, then spends the whole day digging. He runs into dangerous animals and the boys keep messing with him. Stanley stays quiet because fighting back would only make life worse. When he writes to his mom, he lies and says he is having fun, like it's just a normal summer camp. One evening, Stanley finds a fossil while digging and brings it to Dr. Pendanski. The doctor says the warden does not care about fossils. Then he explains this place used to be a real lake long ago, and the land once belonged to the warden's grandfather. Now we jump into the past. This area was once green and alive. A black onion seller named Sam often came through with his donkey cart. He had a soft spot for the local school teacher, Catherine. He brought her special onion treats, and she gave him jars of homemade pickles. The whole town adored Catherine, but they hated seeing her show Sam any kindness. One rainy day, Sam and Catherine kiss. A man named Walker sees it, spreads the news, and soon the angry townspeople burn the school down as punishment. In the past, Catherine runs to the sheriff for help, but he is drunk and tries to get handsy with her. Horrified, she runs back towards Sam, but she is too late. The townspeople have already shot Sam while he is sitting in his boat. A little later, Catherine returns, shoots the sheriff, then kisses him after he dies. That moment is the last piece of her old self. She leaves town and eventually becomes the outlaw everyone fears, Kissin' Kate Barlow. Now we jump back to the present. X-Ray tells Stanley that next time he finds something, he should bring it to him first. Soon after, Stanley gets into a fight with another troublemaker and the other boys pull them apart. Stanley receives a letter from his mom. His dad's experiments have failed again and their landlord might kick them out any day. The next day, Stanley finds a small object in his hole with the letters KB on it. The boys guess it might be part of a gun, but it is too thin. X-Ray snatches it and takes it to Dr. Pendanski, who rushes to tell the warden. When the warden arrives, the boys are stunned. She is a beautiful woman, but her presence is cold and terrifying. She is thrilled by the discovery and gives X-Ray the day off. Then she orders everyone else to dig around X-Ray's hole like she knows something is buried there. The boys dig harder than ever but find nothing except a tiny dial-like piece. After days of searching the same tunnel, the warden tells them to stop and go back to normal holes. The next day, while Mr. Sir is refilling water, one boy steals sunflower seeds from his truck. As soon as Mr. Sir leaves, the boys secretly split the seeds between them. But Mr. Sir quickly realizes the seed bag is missing. He turns the truck around and comes back. The boys panic and try to hide everything. In the chaos, the bag slips and lands near Stanley's feet. Stanley tries to bury it in the sand, but Mr. Sir spots it anyway. To protect the others, Stanley lies and says he stole it alone. The boys stare at him like they cannot believe it. Mr. Sir drags Stanley to the warden for punishment. Inside her office, Stanley notices posters of Kissin' Kate Barlow everywhere, but instead of punishing Stanley, the warden slaps Mr. Sir. She is furious that he stopped Stanley from digging over something as small as sunflower seeds. Then she sends Stanley back to work. When Stanley returns to the tents, the boys treat him like a hero. Stanley finds out Zero even dug part of Stanley's hole for him. Stanley feels grateful and decides to help Zero in return, but Mr. Sir stays so mad that he starts withholding Stanley's food and water. Stanley keeps thinking about what he saw in the warden's office. He realizes that thin tube with KB might have been Kissin' Kate's lipstick. In a flashback, we learn Kate only targeted the people responsible for Sam's death and the school burning. She also stole a fortune, including a treasure chest taken from Stanley's ancestor and buried it near the old lake. Later, Walker and his wife confront Kate, desperate for money because the lake has dried up and the town has fallen apart. Kate could kill them, but she wants them to suffer, so she lets a deadly lizard bite her, dying on purpose so the treasure location dies with her. That forces Walker's descendants, including the warden, to keep digging forever. Back in the present, Stanley starts teaching Zero to read and write. Then he learns Zero's real name is Hector Zeroni, meaning he is Madame Zeroni's descendant, and Zero is fast at digging, insanely fast. Because Zero is so fast, he starts helping Stanley finish his hole too. The other boys get jealous. One afternoon, a bully starts messing with Stanley again. Stanley tries to avoid it, but it turns into a fight. Stanley is losing, and suddenly Zero jumps in to protect him. Zero gets so furious he is seconds away from killing the other boy, until Dr. Pendanski fires a warning shot into the air to stop it. Right then, the warden arrives. The boys reveal that Zero has been helping Stanley dig. Stanley explains he is teaching Zero to read in return. The warden explodes with anger, and Dr. Pendanski mocks Zero, calling him stupid like he is nothing. Zero snaps. He smashes Dr. Pendanski with a shovel and sprints into the desert. Mr. Sir wants to chase him, but the warden stops him. She coldly says Zero has nobody in the world, so they will delete his records and act like he never existed. That night, the boys talk about how Zero will die out there, but Stanley cannot let it go. He remembers the story that his great-grandfather survived 16 days in the desert because he found shelter at a place called God's Thumb. Nobody knows where it is because when they found him, he was half insane. The next day, a new boy replaces Zero and immediately targets Stanley. Stanley makes a decision. When Mr. Sir arrives with water, Stanley steals the truck and takes off. Mr. Sir clings to the door and Stanley tries to shove him off. Stanley gets distracted and crashes into a hole, wrecking the truck. Still, he keeps running on foot into the desert. When the warden hears Stanley escaped, she tells Mr. Sir to wait 2 weeks before filing a missing report. She assumes Stanley will be dead by then, and there will be no body worth looking for.
Under the scorching sun, Stanley keeps walking until he spots Sam's old boat. Beneath it, Zero is lying there, weak but alive. He survived by eating jars of peach jam that Kate once gave Sam. Stanley eats some too, and then he notices a mountain shaped like a giant thumb. Instantly, he thinks this must be God's Thumb, the shelter his ancestor found. They leave the boat and start climbing. It is brutal. Stanley slips, but Zero grabs him and saves him, injuring his own hand in the process. Stanley wraps the wound, and they keep going, but Zero is exhausted and refuses to move. So Stanley lifts Zero onto his back and carries him up the mountain, just like Elia once carried the pig. Soon they find greenery and a small spring. Then Stanley spots wild onions, the same kind Sam used to sell. He wakes Zero, and they both eat onions and drink water like their lives depend on it. Because they do. Without realizing it, Stanley starts humming the old family song. It is the same mountain song tied to Elia's broken promise. By carrying Zeroni's descendant up the mountain and giving him water, Stanley finally completes the ritual, and the curse is lifted. At the same time, back home, Stanley's dad suddenly succeeds with his invention. He creates a formula using peaches and onions that removes foot odor, and the family finally catches a break. The next morning, Zero admits the truth. He stole the shoes. They were donated to the shelter where he lived, and he had no idea they belonged to a famous athlete. He threw them off a bridge while running, and they landed on Stanley's head. Stanley says what happened was meant to happen, and there is no point obsessing over it now. Then Stanley's lawyer arrives at the camp to free him because the court has learned he is innocent, but the warden chases her away.
As the lawyer leaves, she warns the warden that next time she will return with police. After resting, Stanley and Zero head back to the digging field. They search for the exact hole where the lipstick tube was found. They dig together, and finally they hit something solid. It is the buried suitcase, packed with treasure. The warden and Mr. Sir find out and rush over. But then something terrifying happens. Yellow spotted lizards swarm over the boys in the suitcase, almost like they are guarding it. The warden just watches, convinced the lizards will bite the boys soon. She plans to wait until they die, then claim the treasure. Morning comes and the warden is shocked. The lizards still have not bitten Stanley or Zero. Just then, the lawyer returns with police officers. The warden instantly tries to spin a story, claiming the boys stole a treasure case from her office. But Zero points at the suitcase and shows the name written on it, Stanley Yelnats. That proof flips everything. The boys are cleared. The lawyer loads the suitcase into her car and prepares to leave with Stanley, but Stanley refuses to go with Zero. The lawyer demands Zero's file, and they discover it is missing. A police officer calls it in, and the truth spills out. Mr. Sir is a wanted criminal, and Dr. Pendanski is not even a real doctor. The warden is arrested along with them, and right then, rain finally starts falling on Camp Green Lake. The boys celebrate like the sky is apologizing. A few days later, Stanley and Zero open the suitcase with Stanley's family. It is overflowing with treasure. Stanley insists Zero deserves half, and the family agrees. Zero uses the money to hire private investigators, finds his mother, and finally reunites with her. After everything comes out, the government shuts Camp Green Lake down for good. The boys are sent to counseling instead of being treated like criminals. For once, their lives finally get a real chance to restart. Not long after, Stanley and Zero's families end up living as neighbors. Both families are happier than they have ever been because the curse is gone and the truth is finally out. And then the biggest win hits Stanley's dad. Stanley III becomes wildly successful with his invention. His foot odor formula takes off, and it is made from that strange but perfect combo, peaches and onions. Soon, the famous baseball player whose shoes started this whole mess ends up promoting Stanley's dad's product too. And that is where the movie ends. So tell me, did this story surprise you, or did you see the twists coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more movie stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel.